to me your secrets. Show me your nightmares. All cats are gray in the dark, dear, whether or not you dare.
Welcome to All Cats Are Gray in the Dark. I'm your host, April Simmons. This podcast contains true cases of graphic violent crimes and other stories of a dark nature. Please be advised that due to the subject matter and violent, sometimes sexual content and obscene language, this podcast is not for children or the faint of heart.
All right, we're here again. Episode 5, we think. We're confused right now.
We actually had to look up our own podcast to see what episode we were on.
Well, that's because we recorded 2 episodes that had to be completely scrapped because we tried
technical difficulties.
Yeah, we tried to do a 2 mic setup that completely messed everything up last time. So now we're having to re-record some stuff, and then we're going to do something new also. Are you ready to talk about aliens again?
I would love to talk about aliens again.
Aliens for the win.
Aliens are cool.
So, how do you feel about aliens? Because I've got best friends that are aliens. I mean, you know, I'm kidding.
Of the illegal sort?
No.
Or the extraterrestrial sort? Wait, which aliens are we talking about
Both?
this episode?
I don't Both.
Illegal extraterrestrials.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they're here illegally.
They don't have green cards.
They have green skin, maybe, but not green cards.
There you go. Since the whole we're going to storm Area 51 trending hype came about, aliens have, for use of a worse word, have exploded again, and everyone is talking about them. Which brings about the question, do aliens exist?
I definitely believe in the possibility, but not necessarily that they are out there. I just think that it's possible. It's within the realm of possibility. There's a big universe out there. And it's kind of, honestly, a little bit self-absorbed to be like, there's no other life out there. You know, it just seems silly to just not be even open to the idea of it.
I agree. I used to think, no, there's no possible way. We're the only ones here. And then the more scientists and people who, well, Bob Lazar for one, who has claimed to be at Area 51, there are very smart, very high IQ people. This is not just Billy Joe Jim Bob Redneck who claims, you know, he got taken out of the woods and anally probed one night. There's actual scientific people with PhDs who claim that they have proof that aliens do exist in some form or fashion. We're not talking possibly little green Martians, but another life form. So yeah, I think the possibility is there. I'm a bit of a skeptic, I admit, but I do think that the possibility is there.
And before we forget, I wanted to give a shout out to Chip because he's the one that wanted us to do an episode about aliens. So thanks, Chip, for possibly, I don't even know if he's actually listened, but he just said he wanted us to do an episode on it. So
oh, here we are.
Maybe he'll actually listen to us then. How do we go into this here? I guess the first time I really got interested in aliens was the movie Fire in the Sky.
Super creepy movie.
Yeah.
It's based solely on the testimony of one guy who claims he was abducted. His friends couldn't find him for 5 days, and he said that he was abducted by aliens. It was a man in Arizona.
Was it Travis?
Travis Walton, yeah. A logger who claims he was abducted in 1975 and was actually missing for 5 days. His family couldn't find him, his friends couldn't find him, and then suddenly he was back with this super elaborate story of being taken up in an alien aircraft and guinea pigged. But a psychologist has tried to discredit him But there's really no proof either way. I guess you just, it's on faith. You either believe the story or you don't believe the story. Is it possible? Sure. There's many things in the realms of possibility with other life forms. We're simply a little bitty tiny speck in this entire vast universe. So sure, it's possible.
Tell us about any experience you've had with UFOs.
The one thing that made me not so skeptical was the night that you and I went skinny dipping with a friend in the middle of podunk nowhere, Mississippi. We were in a swimming pool, and suddenly we saw this, what I thought at first was a meteor, because wasn't it the Perseids meteor shower?
Yeah, I think it was a meteor shower going on that night.
Supposed to be, yeah. And we were seeing little bitty ones coming through, but suddenly this massive fireball almost, but it was like this greenish, yellow, red, like almost rainbow tint. It came out of the sky and over us super low. It even made a noise and scared the crap out of me. I have not seen anything like that.
We were all scared. We got out of the pool really quick.
We did.
It looked like it came down across the road from his house. There was like a huge tree right in front of his house across the road. And it looked like it came down right there. And so we got out of that pool really fast. Our
fat little naked selves were jumping out of the pool going, what the hell? The aliens are invading. We got to go home. So we threw our clothes on real quick and got in the car. And I started driving down the road. And sometimes you'll just see out in the country, especially in Mississippi, a couple of deer at a time, across the road or whatever. There were herds of deer. There had to have been 30 deer, 40 deer, just more deer than I've ever seen, jumping in front of us, crossing the road like they were running from where this thing came down. It's like...
we ended up seeing other stuff too, raccoons and everything. It was just massive amount of animals running from that area.
It was super creepy. It was one of the scariest nights. I was terrified, honestly. We were on no drugs. We had not been drinking.
But yet it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and we're stepping on it on the way home because our adrenaline is crazy.
Trying not to hit all this wildlife running across the road, trying to get away from whatever it is we're apparently trying to get away from. That was a super scary night. That made me... I thought for a minute we were being attacked. Yeah. By extraterrestrials because we saw this thing come out of the sky that I'd never seen before.
And tell us about the night you were born.
The night that I was born, my dad was coming back from the hospital, which was about 20 miles away from the town we live in. And there were a bunch of cars pulled over on the side of the road. And he pulled over because he thought someone needed, he was a paramedic at the time, a police officer. He thought that maybe someone needed help. And everyone was looking up in the sky. And when he pulled over, he got out of his car and he was looking up in the sky. And there were what he says were flying saucers. Not just UFOs, not exactly flying saucers, but there were unidentified flying objects just kind of hovering over a field. And there were 6 or 7 cars that were pulled over watching this. And then suddenly they just blinked and were gone. Just completely disappeared. Well, the people started getting back in their cars and none of their cars would crank. And it took a while and they would finally crank back up. But I don't know if it was the frequency of the UFOs or what that made their cars stall out. But it was kind of eerie. So, yeah, UFOs on the night I was born. What was it? What was the joke you made? They were just dropping me off?
Yeah, they were just dropping you off.
Yeah, they were just bringing me here.
Those people witnessed their exit after dropping you off.
That's what it was, yeah.
Sahara's an alien baby.
I am of another world for sure. Anybody can tell you that.
She is. And then I have my own story. Well, I've seen several what I would call UFOs, but I remind you, UFO is just unidentified flying object. I am not saying it's an alien. But I've seen several UFOs throughout my life things in the sky that I can't explain. But the worst one was on the Trace doing what we called booger riding. I don't know if anybody else in the South has done this or knows that term, but that's what we called when you're bored in the South, rural South, in the middle of the night. You go booger riding to go to like haunted locations or scary places.
Yeah,
there's
not much else to do in this area.
Yeah. And so that's what we did. But I was actually living in Alabama at that time, and we drove all the way over here because I told them, the Natchez Trace is like the oldest road in Mississippi.
It's one of the oldest roads in the United States.
Yep. And so there's a lot of paranormal activity around it just because it's so old, honestly. And so that whole road is full of cool haunted spots and stuff.
It really is. There's some great places on there.
And basically we decided we were going to go to Witch Dance, which is a place that's supposedly haunted by some witches. And also, it's, according to the sign, there's patches of dirt where no grass grows, and it's because the witches danced there and performed rituals.
It could be because I had so much sex there in the 90s.
That's terrible.
That used to be a very popular spot to go have some makeout sessions.
And it's a very creepy spot, and I've been out there several times.
It is.
I have heard laughter
spooky.
in the woods.
Yeah.
I know that could be somebody physical out there, but it's definitely unnerving when you hear like a cackling laughter echoing through the woods out there. It's super, super creepy. But we were on our way there, and then I'd only been there maybe once before that at that point. And I wasn't sure how far it was down, and I felt like we had gone too far or something. It's in Houston, Mississippi, or near Houston, Mississippi. And I don't even know. I don't know why we turned around, but we just decided we had gone too far, and it was getting late. And this was probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning again, because we were that dumb. And we decided to turn around because we were like, never mind, whatever, this is too far to go. And we turned around, and now that I know the area better, I know that we happened to turn around like probably not within 2 or 3 miles of the actual place. Stupidly. Basically, once we turned around, we didn't go very far until we came upon, and both sides of the roads had open fields, and something came out of the clouds. It was a bright purple.
Was it like the same thing that we saw?
It's not like that, no.
Okay.
It actually zigzagged in the sky.
Ooh.
And went back behind a cloud.
Wow.
And it also, our car radio turned off.
Really?
Like it went static for a few seconds until it disappeared, and then it came back on.
That makes me wonder with the whole thing with my dad, with the vehicles on the side of the road not starting, and then with your radio going off like that. Something about their frequencies.
Yeah.
Whatever's coming through the atmosphere or something. I don't know much about radio frequencies or, what would make a car engine go off and things.
But what I saw was a big ball of purple light, but I've had several people tell me, well, that sounds like ball lightning. But what you don't understand is this is the size of like the moon. It lit up the whole sky.
That's huge.
So even if it was ball lightning, it is still like something weird there because it was just so huge and so bright. It scared us so bad. But then my friends Brian and Ben start like hanging out the window and like, come back for us,
Oh no.
And it
I would have been like,
scared
shut the
shit
fuck
out of
up.
me. I was like, shut the fuck up.
Oh,
This
my
is
God.
serious. I was terrified. We were all terrified and in shock for a little bit, but then when they started doing that, I was just like, oh my God, I'm never doing this with y'all.
I would
again.
have said, careful what you wish for. If they come back and get you, I am not staying. I am going home and forgetting you exist.
Yeah. No missing persons report for your dumb ass.
Nope, because you're stupid. You asked for it.
Oh, is it terrible that I just thought of the fact that maybe they wanted the anal probe because they were both gay? I probably should edit that out. Anyway.
No, don't edit that out. I mean, who doesn't love a good anal probe, gay or straight?
Anyway. I'm going to hell for that one. Let's see. What else we got? Oh, I had a couple of famous cases. Like, have you ever heard about Jimmy Carter seeing a UFO?
I vaguely I've heard something about it, but I don't know the story. It was while he was president, wasn't it? And then they tell him to shut up about it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
No,
that's not what I was thinking
before.
of.
He was running for governor, I think, in Georgia. And it was like 1969.
I remember something about a story with Jimmy Carter that if he said anything about it, it would discredit him. He wouldn't get whatever he was running for.
But the FBI ended up writing up a report based on what he said.
Really?
He was giving a speech at, I think, the Lions Club there in Georgia. And basically everybody out there saw it. So there's too many witnesses, I think, for them to just completely discredit it. There was a bunch of people there. So that I thought that was interesting that, that's a president, basically, that has seen a UFO. And I find that really interesting.
After I had gotten presidency, I would have been like, okay, show me Area 51. Take me there now. I know it exists. It has to. If I ever become president, which will never, ever happen, that's the first thing I would say. I don't care if it's classified or not, even to the president. If I became president, that would be the first thing I would want to know is tell me all about Area 51.
I don't know how you feel about like Roswell and Area 51. Do you think there's really something there with those?
Well, Area 51 actually is an Air Force base. So yes, I do know that there is something there. There's an Air Force base there.
And obviously they want to keep it secret.
Right.
Whatever it is.
Which is odd because in most of the United States, we have military installations in every state, really. And of all of those, you can go on base with certain passes, especially if you're active military, I don't really know how that works, but I know that you can go on most bases, but for some reason with Area 51, you have to have high classified clearance to go there. As far as I know. Why? It makes me wonder, what is it that they're hiding there? Why do you need such high clearance to be able to go there?
All right. Roswell, 1947. Was it a weather balloon or not?
I don't know. I believe that the people there believe what they believe, that it was a UFO. It scared a lot of people. It became super famous. It was in papers everywhere. I believe that they believe it, but I would have had to been there. I don't know. Again, I'm a skeptic. I want to see with my own eyes. I'm a proof person. Show me proof and I'll believe it. I do believe in the possibility, but I can't say, yes, that really happened without showing me evidence.
Have you ever heard about the case of Frederick Valentic, the Australian pilot?
No, I don't think so. I know about one pilot. I've heard the audio of it. I don't know. I was going to ask you if you had heard it or not. I think it might even be on YouTube. There's an audio of some pilots. I think they're Air Force pilots that saw something that they could not explain. Whatever it was going so much faster than they could even keep up with. And that made me wonder too, hey, maybe there's really UFOs out there. But I don't know if it's the same one, so tell us about that.
He was on a 125 nautical mile flight. He was 20 years old. He basically reported unidentified aircraft following him. It orbited above him and had a shiny metal surface with a green light on it. And then his last transmission was metal scraping sounds.
Did he die?
They don't know. They didn't find his plane or him. He's just gone.
I have not heard that one. It's the Bermuda Triangle all over again.
But what I find fascinating is he actually was a believer in UFOs.
Ooh.
So some people think maybe he faked his own death just to
that could be
push forward the agenda.
That could be.
But I think maybe what I'm thinking is maybe he had seen something before.
They knew. They came back for him.
Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe he had seen something before and that's maybe why he believed. But then it's unfortunate that happened, but...
He got Amelia Earharted.
Yeah.
Wow. Wonder if maybe that's what happened to her. She just disappeared like a blip. They
keep finding stuff all over the place and claiming it's her.
And it's not. Yeah. I think this last one, they were really, really adamant that it was her. But then
you didn't hear anything else about it. So
yeah, then it just went away.
Every time I'm like excited because,
that's always been a fascinating story to me.
It is a fascinating story. Let's take a quick break because we're at the 20-minute mark.
Do you like podcasts? Do you like cats? Do you like podcasts named after a cat and contains extremely vulgar humor? If so, I have a show for you! Hi, I'm Justin Kyle, host of the Mistah Whiskah's Clubhouse podcast, and I'd like to welcome you to the Clubhouse.
Oh, I'm gonna fart really bad. Alright, so I kind of push, and I felt something drip down my leg. Oh. It kind of blew my mind that you've never heard of a fleshlight before.
The fuck are you waiting for? Mistah Whiskah's Clubhouse is available on all your favorite podcast apps. iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and many more. Or just simply go to www.mwcpodcast.podbean.com. Meow, bitch.
Alright, we're back.
Welcome back.
I think now we can move on to... He also wanted us to cover, sleep paralysis, I guess, in relation to aliens and stuff. Because sleep paralysis is often something that it's either related to alien abduction or some people think that sleep paralysis is what people mistake for alien abduction. So they're related in a sense of that. And if y'all haven't, I recommend on Netflix a documentary called The Nightmare, which is about sleep paralysis issues. And it is fucking superb.
I haven't watched that yet. I'm going to have to check that out.
Oh, it's creepy though. It's really creepy. Because I've had sleep paralysis, so that really set me off.
I've only experienced it once in my life, but once is enough for me. It was absolutely terrifying when you can't lift your arms, you can't lift your legs, you are stuck. You are completely paralyzed from the neck down. But I could still move my eyes. I don't know if some people can still move their eyes. I could open my eyes. I could move my eyes around. My eyeballs were moving. I could blink, but I could not feel my arms or legs. That was absolutely horrifying. And I don't ever want to feel like that again. So people who suffer from that nightly or even weekly or monthly, I completely feel for them because that is something I don't ever want to go through again.
Sleep paralysis is defined as temporary inability to move or speak while falling asleep or upon waking. I've experienced what I'm not really sure if it qualifies as that, but when I was real little, I think I was around 8 or 9, somewhere in there, I had a sleep paralysis incident when, along with a shadow person sighting, which is sometimes
that
related.
Doesn't help your matters. You're already terrified because you can't move, and suddenly
so I'm not
there's
really
something
sure
in the room.
I'm not sure if it was sleep paralysis or fear paralysis, but I woke up and saw a shadow in the doorway of my room. But what's weird is there was a light shining in from a row of shops that were close to my house. There was a street light shining in the window, but it didn't seem to show me any facial features or any other distinguishable features on the person or whatever it was. And that's one of the things that looking back I find odd. Like when I replay it in my mind, I don't understand why the light's not penetrating that person, and it really freaks me out.
That would be super scary. Did you couldn't speak?
No, I couldn't move or speak. I was thinking I need to be squirming before my parents. They're in the next room.
But you couldn't.
But I couldn't. But what's really odd is he fits the classic shadow person description of the Hat Man. He was wearing what looked like a fedora and a trench coat.
Wow.
And that's like
a
classic
shadow person with terrible style.
Oh, come on now.
Fedora and a trench coat?
I'm a noir person, so that's pretty cool to me, but vintage
shadow person.
But you don't know how. There's a lot of sightings like that, though.
Of the Hat Man?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I haven't heard of the trench coat, but I've heard of the shadow man that wears like a creepy fedora.
I had never heard of anybody else seeing that until I heard an episode of Coast to Coast AM.
I love that show.
And so I have to credit them because I'd never heard of a shadow person until I was listening to that show one night. And they talked about shadow person in that part, and somebody had seen the Hat Man, and I was like, holy shit, you know?
The thing about Coast to Coast, it's so good, but it comes on in the middle of the night, and it's 3:00 in the morning, and they're talking about the creepiest shit you've ever heard of in your life. It's like, no, this should be on at noon, so I'm not so scared to go to sleep now.
I'm kind of sad though, because I used to love it so much, but now it seems like every time I turn it on, they're talking about government conspiracies and stuff, and it's
boring.
Like, yeah, and I know I get bored really easily. It's like, it's not that I don't necessarily agree with the possibility of those things. It just doesn't interest me as much. It doesn't catch my attention.
And the original host, of course, he's been dead for quite a long time. Yeah,
Art Bell.
Yeah. And
now is it still Georgia? Have they changed it now?
I'm not sure. It's probably been 10 years since I've listened to it.
I listened to it not that long ago, but I can't remember. I love that show, and I had to just give it a shout out because that's the first place I ever heard shadow people. But what's
the first
weird
somewhat
about
original podcast
is once the paralysis broke, and I screamed for my parents, and they came running. The guy ran off back down the hallway before my parents got there, or whatever it was, ran. My parents get in there and they assure me that I probably had a bad dream or whatever, like a normal parent would.
Of course, just a nightmare.
But they checked the house. They checked the house anyway. The front door was ajar.
Ooh.
And there was a cigarette put out on the front porch, and nobody in the house smoked.
Okay, you didn't have a shadow man. You had a creeper. You had an intruder is what you had.
But my parents still said, oh no, you just had a bad dream or whatever. But years later, I mean, this is literally just a few years ago, my parents admitted that incident scared the fuck out of them.
And they didn't tell you?
No, not at the time. They did not admit that it scared them or that they thought it was real or anything. But years later, they admitted that was scary to them.
That, of course, as an adult, knowing that someone was in your child's room, I can't believe that they didn't report that. That's the first thing I would have done is, call 911. Hey, there was an intruder in my kid's room.
And there was a halfway house a few blocks away from us, too, so we were wondering if somebody didn't get out.
Very well could have been. You were actually quite lucky, in my opinion, because I don't think you saw a shadow person. I think that was an actual intruder.
I'm not sure either way, honestly. It's like there's evidence that there was something real there, but at the same time, something about him was off. But that could just be that he was mentally...
Did you watch him walk away?
He ran.
He ran. Direction. Did you hear the footsteps?
I don't really remember.
Because it makes me wonder, if it was a shadow person, I would think that shadow people don't have loud footsteps, so that would be a big difference to me if it was an intruder, if it was a shadow person.
Because I screamed. My parents jumped up and ran. So I don't think I would have been able to differentiate between the steps of my parents running and him. So even if he had not made a sound, my parents running my direction probably would have caused enough interference for me not to notice, you know.
Yeah.
I also had kind of an out-of-body experience, or what I think was one, related to sleep paralysis. I was taking a nap, and my ex-husband and I were still together, and he was in another room typing. He was on the computer. These were like the AOL instant messenger days.
Oh, a long time ago.
Yeah. And he was in there typing in another room. Hell, he might have been typing to you. I'm not sure. Because it's when we lived at that shitty trailer.
Oh, yeah.
In Blue Springs.
I remember that.
The same place that the flying banana
the
incident
flying bananas. We need to tell those stories sometime.
Yeah, we'll do that at some point. We'll make that a special episode of like ridiculous... Every
stupid shit that's happened to us.
Every stupid food story that I have, because most of my stories involve food. Anyway, basically,
most of my life involves food.
Yeah, me too. We're fatties. I'm sorry.
I'm a fatty foodie, and
yeah, we're both kind of foodies. I live my life day to day of when the next meal's coming and what it's going to be. I just imagine that that's everybody, but I know it's not. It's like, I don't understand people that don't live thinking about their next meal all the time.
There's worse addictions. To me, I mean, there's so many more
and I'll tell you
bad addictions out there.
This is a stolen joke. I can't even remember what comedian it was, so I'm just telling y'all that up front. It is stolen. But I always used to tell people, like, you know, the only addiction I have is food, and I can't exactly quit cold turkey because cold turkey tastes good. And
no, that's great.
And I told my therapist that. I told my therapist that once, and she laughed her fucking ass off.
That's great.
And then wrote it down. She was like, I gotta tell somebody that.
My therapist retired, and I made a joke with her that it was me, wasn't it? It's not you, it's me. You're retiring because of me. I'm so sorry.
On my last session with my therapist before I stopped going, because actually I stopped going because I lost insurance. I did not have insurance anymore, so I was like, I can't pay it, sayonara.
I stopped going because she quit.
But I had a TARDIS phone case at the time. And
I got you that.
Yeah. And I had a TARDIS phone case, and she was like, "Oh my God, you like Doctor Who?" So we spent most of the freaking session talking about Doctor Who.
Oh my gosh!
So she got paid a ridiculous amount of money to sit and talk about Doctor Who with me.
You know, mine got paid a ridiculous amount of money to talk about movies. We would just sit and talk about movies a lot. It's like we were not really friends because it's, you know, a doctor-patient type relationship. They're not allowed to become your friend, but. You know, it was like sitting and talking to a friend because it was just conversation. It wasn't getting into any deep psychological traumas or, you know, why you really go to see a therapist.
Yeah. Anyway, but I got completely off track from the out-of-body experience. Anyway.
It happens.
Oh, well. But he was in the next room. I could hear him typing on the computer. And so I tried calling for him for some reason, and he didn't seem to hear me. So I stumbled out of bed, half still groggy, and I walked to the foot of the bed, and I can't get past the foot of the bed for some reason. It's almost like some invisible, you know, fog or something preventing me from walking past the end of the bed. And I was so confused, and I started screaming for him, and he didn't hear me. But I could still hear him in there in the other room. And then I looked back, and my body was still in the bed, asleep.
Out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
I've never had one of those. I don't know. This sounds like a therapist. And how did that make you feel? Because I can't imagine how I would feel if I woke up, got out of the bed, and turned around and saw myself. I had died or something. That's what I would wonder. I would wonder, oh my gosh, have I died in my sleep?
But it freaked me out so bad that it just snapped me back into my body, and I woke up.
Did you feel yourself being pulled back into your body, or suddenly you were just there again? It was just
once I freaked out about it, it's like I just instantly snapped back into my body.
Wow.
It was almost like retractable rubber band, how quick, like if you pulled out a rubber band to the end of the bed, and then when I freaked out and realized that I couldn't get past the end of the bed, and I saw myself, and then it just snapped back like that.
Wow.
That's the best way I can think of to describe it. Because it's literally, it's not that I just instantly was back in my body. It was like I was pulled back to my body really fast.
That is so creepy. I can't fathom the thought. But I hear about people who have near-death experiences, and that makes me wonder, were you having a near-death experience? That are in hospital beds it's during surgery in an OR, or they're hooked up to a respirator in ICU, or something bad has happened, and they see themselves leaving their body, that suddenly they're standing over themselves, looking at themselves. And some people claim to see a light and see heaven and things like, or they're just absolute nothingness. And then suddenly they're snapped back. And they call that near death. And then there's been times that surgeons...
I've often wondered that because I do have sleep apnea. It's not diagnosed, but I know I do because...
You snore?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could then.
Because my sister has it really bad and my father does too. They both have CPAPs.
CPAPs? Yeah, my brother uses a CPAP.
So I pretty
should
much
have
know.
one. I really should have one.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder, did I stop breathing for a second and...
Maybe a little too long, maybe 15, 20, 30 seconds.
And then I snapped back and caused myself to start breathing.
There's been surgeons performing CPR and people leaving their bodies and watching the doctor perform CPR on them. And then they're essentially dead, and then they come back to life. And they talk about how they... were standing over themselves, and that sounds exactly like what happened to you. So I'm going to say that you had a near-death experience. I've never had that. I do not want that. That would probably end up being the end of me, because it would scare me so bad I would have an actual heart attack and just never come back.
That would be terrible. Anyway, I think that's pretty much everything on my notes. I do want to give a quick shout out to Locations Unknown podcast and Mr. Whiskah's Clubhouse, because they're giving us shout outs too, and we're going to also have some promos for them coming up. So possibly in this episode, possibly another.
Mr. Whiskah's Clubhouse is hilarious.
It's not
that
for
dude
the easily offended. It's
makes
weird,
me
but
laugh so hard. Definitely give that dude a listen, because I haven't enjoyed a podcast besides our own like that in a long time.
But yeah, definitely check that out. And also, we're still looking for more questions for our Q&A episode, which I think is episode 10, coming up soon. So we need more questions. So email us. For the link for our email is in the show notes, and I need to hurry up and change that. So that we have a regular email for both of us.
mangledfairy@gmail.com or allcatsaregrayinthedark@mail.com.
Yeah. Either one of those will work. Email us or message us on Facebook or whatever you got to do, because we need some questions for the
No questions are too personal.
We only have a handful right now, so we need more questions.
No questions are too weird. No questions are too out there. No questions are too personal. Whatever you feel like asking, we will be happy to try and answer.
Yep. Whether it be about a case or a subject we've covered, or just anything you want to know about us in general.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby.
Yep. We're both TMI queens. We'll talk about anything, pretty much. All right. See you next time. Whoever's listening. Talk hard.